Hey, what's up everyone? This is Snicked here with the first in a series of Royal Revolt 2 video base reviews. And in this installment, very first installment, and actually my very first video screencast ever. So could be a little bit of a bumpy ride, but I hope you'll stick with me and we'll get through it together. But in the first installment here, we're going to be looking at WilligFlorian. It's a 3,000 trophy player. His name is actually Florian Willig, and he is an active member on the Royal Revolt 2 Facebook group that I'm also a part of. And so Florian had asked to have his particular base reviewed after he actually went so far as to design the base layout that you see in front of you here by hand. He looks like he used drafting paper or graphing paper and drew everything out. So everything down to the direction that the towers are oriented toward, the placement of the barriers or the blockades that he has throughout the layout, and even the layout itself, which is what we call a Clover base layout because of the prominent kind of out and around circular feature there, and these two major choke points. One being the initial turn in the base, was all pretty deliberately thought out and planned, and it's a great process. I applaud Florian for doing that, because doing it manually like that and drawing it all up entails doing some research, and a lot of intentional thought went into to designing it for optimal kind of tactical benefits that maybe isn't normally gotten into quite as deeply when you're doing it a different way. So that's really cool, and I'm sure that we're going to see here in a moment that it'll have proven to pay off for him pretty well with a good design. So what I'll do really quickly is look at what I'm about to bring to the raid that we're going to have here in a moment in terms of spells and troops, and then we'll do a brief overview of Florian's base and then go into the raid itself. So first off, just point out the spells that I'm going to be bringing to the table. These are the spells that I use when I'm battling at-level players where I'm at, which is roughly 3,700 to 4,000 trophies, so quite a bit higher. And so the spells that I will be using are Heal level 11. As Jason W likes to say, this is an insanely overpowered spell right now, and I would probably agree with that, although I'm not going to complain. I have about a little over 5 days until it's level 12, and then it'll actually be up to 4,196 hit points. And what happens with Heal really quickly is that either applies to the hero and the units, and it just keeps applying as damage is sustained until that number runs out, or until 5 seconds have elapsed, whichever comes first. So Heal is going to be my defensive spell that I'll be bringing along, and then for my offensive spells, kind of the dynamic duo here in in-game play, which is Bladestorm, maxed out at level 7. Actually is a damage over time, or a DOT spell, is the acronym for that, and it produces almost 15,000 normal damage in the 5 seconds that it's active. So point for point, as far as normal damage, it's by far the most powerful spell in the game. Sonic Blast is actually a little bit more potent than Bladestorm, but that's because it churns out almost 14,000 in blunt damage over 3 seconds. So it's quite a bit shorter in duration, and so it packs more of a punch in a more concise time frame. The difference, of course, is that these are each tools which are purpose built for different things, and so if you think about your spells as part of your toolkit that you bring to a raid, Bladestorm is great for tearing down blockades, tearing through waves of troops. Those are its two primary functions, at least as I use it. And then it's great against paladins because paladins are actually susceptible to normal damage. A lot of people forget that, but that's that's a paladin weakness actually. And then Sonic Blast is excellent for tearing through waves, of course, but then also that blunt damage is imperative to have when you're facing off against Skull Towers and then the Castle Gate as well. And I would go so far as to say that you really don't need cannons. You could double up on cannons, and that would be particularly devastating, but maybe a little bit redundant because a high level or a maxed out Sonic Blast is going to be doing a lot of work on those high-level skull towers and at the castle gate to bring them down pretty quickly. So flipping back to troops really quickly, I'm going to be using paladins. Gone back and forth between knights and paladins because mostly these melee troops drop off like flies. They take a lot of damage and they don't hold up very well. Although paladins do hold up quite a bit more than knights do. Probably about 3 times stronger in terms of hit points, and so they can tank a little bit better. What I typically find in high level gameplay is that by the time I get to a castle gate, and I always see this on the screen where victory or raid, where your troops are jumping up and down, that there's hardly ever any knights there. Sometimes there are a few paladins. So it's Arblasters, Pyromancers, and the hero, at least in my playing style, that tend to do the heavy lifting. But a few more paladins tend to get through, so I'm opting for those. And then Arblasters are essential for the range damage that they put out. They're also great against mortars, and then Pyromancers are excellent against they're a great all-around troop to have. And then they're great against Firebolt towers, which, looking over here at Florian's base and the layout and construction, we see that Firebolt towers are the primary tower that are featured in his layout. And so, as I had said, in addition to Sonic Blast, which is great for bringing those down, Firestorm is still the best spell for it, but Sonic Blast is important for so many other reasons that we choose that instead of Firestorm, even in a scenario where there aren't any skull towers to be found, like Florian's base here. But so Pyromancers and Sonic Blast is what we'll be relying upon primarily to bring down these Firebolt towers. And then you can tell that his base is still somewhat in transition from mid-level to what we'll call high-level gameplay, because after you get past the Firebolt towers and all blockades, which is another sign he's transitioned over from barricades into blockades exclusively, which is a good idea. And something all players will eventually want to do, starting the blockade upgrade cycle sooner rather than later. But you can see that he has archer towers, then followed by gargoyle and bomb towers, and those are all kind of holdovers from an earlier phase of gameplay, and they're great for early and mid-level gameplay, but they begin to become irrelevant and obsolete as we move into higher levels, especially the bomb tower. Because the Skull Tower comes along and completely supplants the Bomb Tower. It's astronomically higher in hit points and just as much so in the damage that it doles out. But of course, they're the most expensive tower to upgrade, and it's a matter of getting the Inventor's Workshop up to the point where Skull Towers are released. And Florian apparently is not quite there, although I think he mentioned that he is right on the cusp of unlocking that. Looking at his troops, paladins are great. Again, they're, other than the hero, they're kind of and pyromancers, but they're kind of the tank of all of the available troop types. And the reason I would say that over like pyromancers, for example, because pyromancers have the same hit points as paladins do, but pyromancers are really susceptible to sword rain, and paladins are not. Paladins are susceptible to normal damage, like we talked about, so Bladestorm's no good for them. But the other major troop that they're actually susceptible to is knights, but a lot of people won't bring knights along in higher level gameplay, and they'll opt more for a setup like what I have here, or maybe they'll take the melee out entirely, let the hero do all the melee, and then substitute cannons in there, or even mortars. And so paladins, still here. Paladins end up being a great option for outfitting your waves with as maybe the primary or kind of the anchor troop unit. Next up is mortars, pyromancers, and arblasters, and these three are great for ranged damage. I do like that mortars is featured number 1 again because a level 7 or higher sword rain can one-shot pyromancers and arblasters at high levels, and so a lot of people will bring that out when they see, if they're looking at this at all, and they see a lot of ranged troops are being featured in the waves. But mortars are not nearly as susceptible to sword rain, and it's impossible to one-shot a mortar with sword rain. And at high levels, mortar's poison damage can actually be pretty powerful. So that's good to see. You have to have pyromancers and arblasters in there somewhere. If the raider hasn't upgraded, and at this point, a lot of raiders probably haven't upgraded to sword rain level 7 or higher. These are pretty good, especially if he's upgrading them aggressively. You got to have them. And then last up, just looking really quickly, is the Froster. And I'm glad that he included the Frosters. Frosters are kind of hated on, and they're really underestimated right now, just based off of what I see in terms of comments, and they're really underrepresented actually around this level of gameplay. But I have noticed quite a bit that Frosters are being included with at least one per wave in higher level play, and among a lot of players whose bases are maybe more around 4,000 trophies. And the reason for that is because, as I've commented in the forum recently, the game becomes more about running out the clock on the individual that's trying to raid you, as opposed to killing them outright. With things like level 11, level 12 heal, and really high accessories and items and armor, it can be really difficult, even with maxed out skull towers and firebolt towers, to kill off somebody outright unless they're just sprinting through the base and not paying any attention to how much damage they're taking. What's actually maybe a little bit more of a subtle tactic, but I think is ultimately more effective, is just slowing them down to the point where the clock ends up killing them, or ends up taking away that 100% victory, and that ends up awarding you, the defender, the trophies that they were after, even though you're going to forfeit some gold. So the Froster is a great inclusion there. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and go into the base itself. And I'm going to try to point out, it'll be a quick run through, but I'm going to try to point out as many features here as possible. Oop, that's not a good way to start. All right, so what I'll do is I always like to get a good representation of pyromancers and arblasters right out of the gate. So you can see how the high level Bladestorm there just carved up that first wave, but that was a good representative wave. Just like this one, you can see the Froster there, the Paladins, and then a Mortar and a Pyromancer. So that's good. Same thing here in this wave. The waves constructed the exact same. Could use a little variety. It's good to customize your waves depending on kind of the timing. But look here, you can see there is a tower over there, a firebolt tower hitting me, which is a function and kind of one of the signature elements of the Clover design. There's that tower that's over there in the middle that you just can't get to until you get all the way around. So it's good to see that working. And there was some good crossfire and overlap there with multiple fire towers. Again, Pyromancer, Paladin, Arblaster, and the Froster. And you can see the frost effect is that white swirl going around me. If you've seen Frozen and you know what Elsa looks like, as I have, because I have a daughter, then anyway, that's neither here nor there. So we have some good overlap here. Here's another firebolt tower. It's not the one in the middle, or no, it is. I'm sorry, it is the one in the middle. Is it? Yeah. No, it's further up. I'm sorry, but anyway, I mean, another good example of where there was a turn there, where there was an inaccessible tower that I couldn't quite get to. The waves continue to be pretty representative. There's another one. See, Arblaster, Froster, Pyromancer, 2 Paladins, and a Mortar. Almost too good. Almost too representative of what's possible, or of what needs to be in a wave. It's good to have that, but sometimes some concentration is important. But it just depends on how you. That's really, I think, advanced, is getting into optimizing individual waves, and you have to be really settled on your base design. So you can see here I have all Pyromancers behind me, and that's no surprise. That's a function of not being as susceptible to firebolts, and also having the most hit points. And there's one little Arblaster down there. No Paladins made it. Of course, I didn't really use a lot of those. So it was talking a lot and a little distracted from gameplay, and not accustomed to multitasking like that, the way Jason Weivart is. But anyway, so that turned out really, really well. Love the base, and yeah. And so any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks.